Honest J. Nowak. Oh yeah. A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Honest J. Nowak. So today here on Honest J. Nowak, let's go ahead and bring up another small topic of mine, known as planes. Airplanes, or planes, referring to geometry. Again, there's tons of different ways you can have the word plane come together in a sentence. There are, of course, multiple meanings to that word, so I feel like that this is going to be some little trend at some point, where I'm just bringing up a bunch of terms that happen to have multiple meanings, but yet I don't really happen to have much of the context involved in some of the meanings to them. But you know what? Regardless of how knowledge I have, regardless of all of that, let's be sure that this time I end up going to go ahead and just explain it. But here, I'm going to be talking about planes. And yeah, many of us happen to be familiar with the airplane. Of course, many people out there who happen to have some piloting skills out there should be able to know that, well, despite being one of the safest types of planes out there, the Boeing 747 out there, it's just a massive piece of aluminum. But for the most part, being that it's quite lightweight, and even with thousands of pounds of people being hunkered inside of the coach, inside of the cabin, and all that good stuff, I mean, I really don't see much else I have left to talk about. I don't know many people out there who happen to be pilots, but there just so happens to be another recurring memory of mine. Of one time where turbulence was so high, it felt like something way worse than any roller coaster in the entire world. This, of course, happened nearly 3 years ago, on my way to Florida, May of 2017. The flight that we went from Milwaukee down to Orlando was massively caught in huge surges of turbulence because of headwinds that were just coming all around on the way there. Scared out of my mind, I just had no idea how to cope with such a traumatic event like that. I mean, it definitely took me hours just to simply calm myself down from that point, but I mean, what else can I say about it? It was a massive surge of turbulence, by the likes of which I've never encountered before. It was certainly an event that I had no idea how to respond to, or how to just simply cope with the fact that being on a plane, despite having that in the back of my mind, it was still not enough processing that I needed to simply talk about how the turbulence itself was so dangerous. I mean, the plane could have just shut itself down and fallen out of the sky, similar to how some planes have, especially ones that happen to be caught in volcanic smoke and dust, where engines can get clogged up and a silent dive could take place. But you know what? I'm more than willing to let that one go for now, because of course there were a lot of other flights that I had taken since then, especially the flights including the one from Orlando to Wisconsin, and then of course the flights that took place later on. Most importantly, the flights that I had taken during my trip to Carolina last month. Well, it's almost 2 months, but you know what? That's certainly another big one right there that I can mention right away. Those flights were ones that I didn't really have to worry about turbulence, because none of which had turbulence that high. So, I guess the main reason about it is the fact that, well, many people out there who happen to be more familiar with the fact that, wow, turbulence is a massive thing out there to worry about, but turbulence is not really the main context that I'm pointing out. Because after all, I was just willing to go ahead and talk about the planes in general and the kind of flighting experience I've had. So, the kind of flights I've had during my Carolina trip were much more easygoing and a lot more reliable, pretty much. Of course, they were all Southwestern flights, just like many others I've had during all this time that I've been flying up in the air, but regardless of what it may seem, I'm pretty sure that any of you guys can probably have, something to say to me, but I could probably consider it optional at this point. You don't really have to if you don't feel like it, but I just feel like discussing my point of view on the whole thing itself and the fact that, well, despite the kind of plane I was in, which was also a Boeing, I've had some tough times, but I've also had some really easy times. The catering was nice, and Southwest even had its own share of offering movies to watch for free, especially on much longer flights. I can only recall that happened just once. On my way back from Carolina, we had to make a mid-stop to Kansas, and then back to Milwaukee, which took about 4.5 hours to complete, but then again, it's probably the longest I've ever been on an airplane in my entire life so far. So, that's just pretty much all I got there. But if you want to see more, go down to my channel. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.